Hey guys, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm super excited to be sharing some delicious and healthy Mediterranean recipes with you. If you are new to my channel, welcome. I hope that you do decide to stick around and subscribe. I am a busy mom and I love posting all kinds of videos about cooking. So some of these recipes are going to come from a Mediterranean cookbook that I've had for a while and have not had the chance to cook anything out of. So I'll be linking that cookbook down below, but let's get into it. I'll share with you what I'm going to make today. I'm going to be making some roasted red pepper hummus, a kale and beef salad, a Spanish tortilla, some tabbouleh, pasta e fagioli soup, and some fig and goat cheese appetizers. So before we get started on the recipes, I just wanted to show you quickly some of the grocery items that I picked up to make these Mediterranean meals. A lot of things I already had on hand. I needed to fill in a few pantry items and mostly produce. Grabbed some lemons. Virtually every recipe that I'm going to make calls for lemons, so I needed those. I needed one red pepper, some extra garlic, some mint. This is for the tabbouleh. If you've never tried that before, it is delicious. I've made it several times. This is a different recipe that I'm trying, but very similar, so I'm looking forward to having that. I got 2 lemons. There was one recipe that called for lemon zest and I couldn't remember how much. I think it was 2 tablespoons, so I went ahead and got 2 lemons. I grabbed some tomatoes on the vine, some celery, 2 bunches of fresh parsley. Multiple recipes called for this, but primarily the tabbouleh calls for a lot of chopped parsley. So I grabbed 2 bunches, some scallions or green onions, 1 dozen eggs, some sliced almonds. This is for the top of the roasted red pepper hummus. Some orzo pasta for several of the recipes. I had to improvise a little bit. The original recipe I was going to make for goat cheese stuffed figs. I could not find fresh figs anywhere in my town. Again, one of the downsides of living in the Midwest is that sometimes you cannot find the groceries that you want around here. So I'm gonna improvise and do the fig and goat cheese dish on some crackers instead, and I think it'll still be good. So I grabbed some honey goat cheese, some frozen peas, and instead of the fresh figs, I just went ahead and grabbed some fig spread. I think that will work out fine. And then for canned items, I just went ahead and got 3 cans of cannellini beans. There were several recipes that called for those. 2 cans of garbanzo beans and 2 cans of petite diced tomatoes. So that is everything I grabbed for these meals. Okay, so we're going to start out with the hummus recipe, and so for this you'll need some garlic. I'm using garlic paste, some salt, a little bit of cayenne pepper, some lemon juice, some extra virgin olive oil, roasted red peppers. You can find these in a jar at the grocery store, some garbanzo beans, and some tahini, which is sesame seed paste. You'll also need either a food processor or a blender to make this recipe. I prefer to make it in a food processor, so I will link the one that I have down below. It is an indispensable kitchen tool and I love using it. So I'm going to start by processing the chickpeas into a coarse paste, and then we'll add the rest of the ingredients. If you have never made hummus before at home, it is super easy and it tastes so much better than the stuff that you buy in the store. The other nice thing is that it is really economical to make. Garbanzo beans are typically super cheap. They're high protein and it makes a great snack throughout the week. I like to pack these for my lunches for work with cucumbers and pita crackers and baby carrots. Tahini is a really important ingredient in hummus, and sometimes it can be hard to find, especially if you live in the Midwest like I do. I usually find it at my local specialty grocery store, but you can also find it at Trader Joe's. However, my Walmart doesn't have it. So after everything is processed into a smooth texture, go ahead and taste it to see if it needs more seasoning. And I served this in a bowl alongside some cucumbers, and I topped it with toasted almonds, a little bit of olive oil, and parsley. Okay, before we get started on the next recipe, I want to take a moment to thank Green Chef for sponsoring today's video. If you guys aren't familiar with Green Chef, they are a USDA certified organic company, and their meal plans include paleo, plant-powered, vegan, and vegetarian. They also have keto meal plans, balanced living, and family plans. It is a meal delivery service, and Green Chef lets you choose from a wide array of easy-to-follow lifestyles with select organic ingredients. Everything is hand-picked and delivered right to your door, and ingredients come pre-measured, perfectly portioned, and mostly prepped. There is a diverse array of meal plans with plenty of options to choose from each week, so you can actually enjoy sticking to your goals. And the thing that I like about Green Chef is that you can switch up your meal plan whenever you're ready to try a new way to eat. Today I'm going to be making a Greek kale and beef salad, which was totally delicious. If you guys want to try out Green Chef, there is a link in my description box below. Go to greenchef.us/JenChapin80 and click on Get Started. You can get a total of $80 off plus free shipping. So this is actually my fourth time getting a Green Chef box, and I've been getting the keto version, and I really think that if you are following a low-carb diet and you're interested in a meal delivery service, that this is the way to go. Everything that I have tried has been really delicious. The ingredients are super fresh. I've had no issues with quality or anything like that. It's been totally great. So today, like I said, I'm going to share with you this Greek kale and beef salad as one of my Mediterranean recipes today. So the first thing you saw me do there was just taking the kale off the stems, and I'm washing them in my salad spinner while I chop up my onions. I'm going to heat up a nonstick skillet with a little bit of olive oil, and that's what I'll use to saute my ground beef and my onions and peppers. So I'm just using my meat chopper to break up the ground beef. I also put in the onions that I chopped up, and the kit also came with some roasted red peppers, so I added those to there. They also included some gyro style seasoning, which was really delicious. And so I added that along with salt and pepper, and then just cooked that until it was totally cooked through. So now that I was done washing my kale, I just went ahead and spun that dry in my salad spinner. I always love using that for washing greens and all my produce actually. And then when I make salad out of kale, I usually like to chop it up pretty finely, just because I find that since kale is a tougher green, it's easier to eat it if it's in smaller pieces. The other great thing about making salads out of kale is that you can actually dress them ahead of time, especially if you're wanting to make something like this for meal prep for later in the week or work. You can hold kale salads in the refrigerator for probably about 2 days. I've done it before and it works out just fine. So once all my kale is in the bowl, I'm going to drizzle it with some olive oil, and then I'm going to also drizzle in some of this lemon basil caper sauce. You guys, this was so good, such a good flavoring for the kale. And then what we're actually going to do is just massage the kale. And if you've never done this before, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's just rubbing the oil and the seasonings and that dressing into the greens to get them a little bit more tender. You can see here that my beef is done, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. I did drain the beef, but there wasn't much fat at all. So next I'm going to go ahead and chop up my tomato. Now this meal was supposed to serve 2, but honestly the portions were huge. I really think it could have served 3 people. So I'm just going to chop up this tomato and get it into the bowl with my greens. Okay, the next step was to chop up some cabbage and add that into the kale salad as well. That gave it a nice crunch. And I'm also adding the feta cheese that came with the kit, and then I'm just going to give that a good toss to combine everything together. So I actually made this for lunch, and I ate one portion for lunch that day, and then I packed the rest up in a container to take to work the following day, and it was really good both ways. I did pack the beef separately in my meal prep container so that I could heat that up before I assembled it. But I just put my greens and salad on the plate and put the beef on top, drizzled it with some of the tzatziki sauce that came with the kit and the Kalamata olives, and this was so delicious. Low carb, healthy, totally filling, really good. I would definitely recommend it. So if you guys want to check out Green Chef, I will have all the information down below and the link to get $80 off. So the next recipe I'm sharing with you is a recipe for a Spanish tortilla with roasted red peppers and peas. If you've never had one of these before, they are really common at tapas bars and restaurants. And essentially it is like really tender sliced potatoes cooked in eggs, and traditionally there might be peppers or peas or some other type of vegetables added to it. You can serve this for breakfast. You can cut it up into little squares and serve it as an appetizer. It's really good, like with some garlic aioli, or you could have it as an entree with a salad. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut up my potatoes. I have some Yukon Gold potatoes that I peeled, and I'm going to slice those as thin as I can. I get a lot of questions about the chef's knife that I use, and so I'll leave a link to that down below. If you do cook any amount, I would say it makes it so much easier and so much more enjoyable to cook if you have a really sharp chef's knife. It just makes your life a lot easier. So what we're going to end up doing is cooking potatoes and onions in a skillet until they're tender, adding the rest of our vegetables and the egg mixture. I also wanted to mention that any of the recipes that I use in this video will either be linked in the description box below, or I'll have them typed out in a Word document that you can download as well. So once my potatoes and onions were cut up, I'm going to put those in a large bowl, toss them with olive oil, salt, and pepper before I get them into the skillet. This recipe is also super kid friendly. There's really no, strange ingredients in it that kids don't like. My kids like both red peppers and peas, and they really like potatoes too, so they actually really did like this dish. So once my potatoes were coated in oil, salt, and pepper, I am pouring those into a nonstick skillet. It's really important that you use a nonstick skillet because you're going to turn this out onto a plate and flip it over at the end. What we're going to do is cook this for 25 minutes covered on low heat, and you want to stir it every 5 minutes. The goal is to get the potatoes to cook slowly and end up nice and crispy so you can incorporate them into the eggs. So I'm using the same bowl that I used to mix my potatoes and oil together, and I'm going to crack 8 large eggs into that bowl and whisk them up really well. I do have a very old egg beater you can see here. I don't even know where I got this. I feel like I had this in my very first apartment that I had when I was like 18 years old, but it works really well for mixing up eggs. So the next step is to cut my roasted red peppers. Again, you can find these in a jar at the grocery store. A lot of times they're like by the pickles and olives. I did pat them dry with a paper towel before I cut them up, just to make them a little bit easier to chop. And you can see that I am using a small cutting board to chop those up so as not to stain my countertop. Here are the potatoes. They are all cooked after 25 minutes, nice and soft on the inside and a little bit crispy on the outside. So I'm going to add the roasted red peppers to my egg mixture along with some frozen peas that I had thawed out, and then toss in the potatoes. I'm going to give that a good stir and then put that back into the skillet to cook all together. One other thing I wanted to mention that I get questions on is my butcher block countertop. Do I get stains? Does it start to smell, etc.? I actually made a whole video on that. So if you have questions on that particular topic, I'll link it down below so you can get those answered. So once the mixture is back in the pan, you can turn the heat down and cover that. And basically you just want to cook it until it is set on the bottom and you can turn it out onto a plate. You see that mine actually fell apart just a little bit, but that's okay. I was able to salvage it. So I turned it out onto a plate and then flipped it back over in the skillet to cook the other side. Yes, I made a little bit of a mess, but like I said, I was able to salvage it. And once I cooked it on the other side, it all came back together. So after the other side is finished, go ahead and turn the heat off, and then I let it rest for just a few minutes before I turned it out onto a cutting board. So I cut this into quarters. We actually had this for brunch on the weekend one day, and you can serve it with chopped parsley. Like I said, this is really good with a garlic aioli also on the side. I encourage you to try it. It would also be really good with some cheese added in. Okay, so the next recipe I'm going to show you is a tabbouleh. If you're not familiar with this, it is a bulgur wheat salad. If you've never seen bulgur wheat, this is what it looks like. I keep mine in a mason jar in the pantry, and this is super easy to cook. It's basically kind of reminds me how you cook couscous. So I'm going to put half a cup into my measuring cup here on the counter, and then I'm going to pour in some boiling water to get that to start softening. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and wash up my parsley and the rest of my ingredients. So I like to wash my ingredients, my veggies and my herbs and everything like that in my salad spinner. I have an OXO salad spinner. I'll link it down below. I basically just soak them in cold water and veggies until they are nice and clean. And then I rinse them, drain them, and spin them dry in the salad spinner. So to store fresh parsley, I like to put that on paper towels. I roll it up and put it in a Ziploc bag. And honestly, I can get about 10 days, sometimes 10 to 14 days out of it if I store it that way. I also needed to wash up some celery, and so I'm just going to use the same method. I chop that up, put it into my salad spinner with really cold water and some vinegar. It's still kind of on the fence as far as the research shows about vinegar removing bacteria, but I like to use it because it does help loosen any dirt that you have on your veggies. So now that I have all of my veggies chopped and ready to cook, we'll go back to the tabbouleh. I just wanted to show that because I do get questions on that sometimes still. So I'm putting some boiling water in my measuring cup, and I let that sit for about 20 minutes until the bulgur wheat was softened. And I'm going to drain that in the sink and then just let it cool before I assemble the rest of the salad. I did get that electric kettle on Amazon. I like it because it's a pretty blue color and it works really well. This is actually the first time I've ever had an electric kettle, so I can link that down below as well if you are interested. So traditionally, tabbouleh has lots of fresh parsley and mint and veggies in it. So I'm going to chop up some tomatoes and get those into the bowl with the bulgur wheat. You don't have to worry about including the juice of the tomatoes because it will help season the salad. So go ahead, chop it up, everything, seeds, juice, everything, and put it into the bowl. The next ingredient is some chopped up cucumber. You do want to make sure that you chop this up rather fine so that the salad is easier to eat. I would definitely recommend making this salad as a meal prep for the work week, or even if you wanted to have it as a side for dinner, you could totally make it ahead of time. It honestly tastes better the longer it sets in the fridge, and it keeps really well because bulgur is a really hearty grain. I like to use English cucumber to put in the salad because it's seedless, it has less water, and I find that the skin is thinner. You don't have to peel it. Next, I'm going to need 2 cups of parsley. Yes, that is a lot of parsley, but that is what makes this salad so great. It just tastes so awesome and fresh. And right now in Iowa, it is winter and cold. And when I make something like this, it just gives me hope that spring is coming, and I love eating it, especially in the winter time. So I went ahead and chopped up my parsley, stems and all, and I'm going to chop up some mint. I did actually add some more mint off camera. I couldn't find it when I was trying to film this, and I knew I had it in the fridge, but I just pressed on anyway. But yes, you do want to add more mint than that. And like I said, the recipe will be linked down below. Next, I'm going to add a couple of green onions chopped up, and then add some salt, some olive oil, and some pepper. You can also add additional seasonings like cumin. I'm also adding some lemon juice, and then I'm just going to give that a big toss, and we will be good to go. I did eat some of this on the day that I made it, and then I packed the rest into mason jars. They keep really great, like I said, in the fridge. All right, so here is my completed tabbouleh salad. My favorite thing to do with this is to make like a Mediterranean plate. So have this with some hummus and some pita and some grilled chicken. Totally bomb. I love those kind of meals. Okay, so next recipe we're going to show is a pasta e fagioli soup, and you may be familiar with this soup from Olive Garden. I know that they have it there. Personally, I haven't been to an Olive Garden in I don't remember how long, but this recipe did come from the America's Test Kitchen cookbook, and so it is a little bit different in that you add orange zest and fennel to the recipe, which is kind of an interesting twist on it, and I found it really, really delicious. So I'm going to start by chopping up my veggies that I'll need for the soup. I chopped up my celery and onion, and I'm also going to chop up 1 bulb of fennel. If you've never had fennel before, it does have a slight licoricey taste if you eat it raw, but I find that if you cook it in a dish, especially like this soup, it does tone it down a little bit, so don't be concerned about that. It does give the soup a lot of flavor. You want to make sure that you're chopping your veggies fairly fine so that they will saute and get tender in the soup. The original recipe calls for pancetta, but I actually had bacon on hand and I wanted to use it up. And so I'm using chopped bacon in place of the pancetta, but feel free to use either one. It will work out just fine. So into the pan with the bacon, after that was sauteed, I'm adding my chopped veggies. I'm using a bench scraper to transfer them. If you don't have one of those, I would totally recommend it. It's very useful in the kitchen. I'll link one that I have down below. And also to make this recipe, I'm using my Lodge Dutch oven, which is one of my favorite pots to cook soup in. And Adam actually got me that on Amazon, so I'm going to link that down below for you as well. It is a great tool that I use in my kitchen all the time. So while the veggies are sauteing, I'm just going to chop up some garlic. So sorry for the camera shake there, but if you've never peeled fresh garlic, you basically just use the side of your chef knife to give it a whack and smash it, and then the paper will come off and you can chop it up. The reason why you don't add garlic now when you're starting to saute the veggies is because garlic is a little bit more delicate and you don't want to burn it. If you burn garlic and it's in your dish, it will make your dish bitter. Okay, so next ingredient we are going to use is some anchovies. Do not be afraid. I personally don't like anchovies plain, but I use them in recipes like this and in Caesar salad. And no, it does not taste fishy. The only thing that it does is gives the dish a really nice, like briny, salty flavor. So I rinsed those off, patted them dry, chopped them up with the garlic, and after the veggies were tender, I added those to the pan. I'm just going to give that a good stir. You can actually see the nice fond that we have on the bottom of the pan. That's going to be really great once we add the broth for the soup. That will flavor it really nicely. So next I'm going to add some orange zest. That was another unique thing about this particular recipe, is that no recipe that I've ever made for pasta fagioli soup has used that before, but it was a really great addition. I'm using my microplane to add that. If you don't have a microplane, you totally should. It is very awesome for zesting citrus. You can also use it to grate garlic, grate fresh nutmeg, grate Parmesan cheese. They're around $10 and it is well worth it. The next thing I'm adding is all of my herbs and spices, and I'm adding those to give them a little bit of a chance to toast up with the veggies before I add the liquid and the rest of the ingredients. So next we're going to add our diced tomatoes. I am using two 14-ounce cans of petite diced tomatoes. You can use a large 28-ounce can, obviously, if that's what you have on hand. I prefer the petite tomatoes just because I think that they do much better in a soup like this. I would rather have the smaller chunks of tomatoes than the large ones. I'm also going to need some cannellini beans, so watch me as I try to pour these one-handed into my mesh sieve and dump a few of them down the drain, but you do want to drain and rinse these before adding them to your soup. Once the beans are added, I'm going to just cook everything together for about 10 minutes to allow the flavors to blend before I add my chicken broth to it. So I love this recipe also because it calls for a rind of Parmesan cheese. I think it gives the soup such great flavor. What I do is every time I buy, a wedge of Parmesan, I'll put the rind in the freezer until I'm ready to use it in a marinara sauce or a soup like this. So once that has been bubbling together for 10 minutes, you can add the rest of the soup ingredients. I am adding 1 cup of dried orzo. That is what the recipe called for, but I think if I were to make this again, I would use the little ditalini pasta. I think that would be a little bit more authentic. I'm going to add some salt and then my chicken broth. So I do make my own homemade chicken stock and beef stock, and I keep those in the freezer. I actually have a video on that, which I can link down below if you guys are interested in how to do that, but it tastes so much better, and it's actually a lot cheaper than the store-bought stuff. So I'm going to give that a stir and then basically just simmer this on low heat until the pasta is cooked through. If you want to make this ahead of time, I would leave the pasta out and then cook it separately when you're ready to serve it, because the cooked pasta will thicken up the soup quite a bit as it sits. And if you're going to meal prep it or, just make it ahead of time, just keep that in mind. So at the end, I added some fresh parsley to finish it, and here is the finished product. I would recommend trying this soup if you never have before. It has great flavor and it is awesome, especially on these cold winter days that we've been having here in the Midwest. Okay, so the last ingredient I'm going to share with you guys is an appetizer, fig and goat cheese crackers with walnuts and honey. I'm actually showing you here the original recipe in the cookbook that this was modeled off of. I could not find figs anywhere in my town, and so I had to basically improvise and make this on a cracker, but it turned out delicious. So what you'll need for this is some goat cheese. I'm using the honey goat cheese that I got at Hy-Vee, some fig spread. I found this in the deli section, kind of next to like the salami and crackers and nuts. I also have some honey, some walnuts, and then I'm using water crackers for this recipe. Water crackers are great for a recipe like this because they don't have really much flavor themselves. And sometimes if you use like a Ritz or like a buttery cracker, it competes with the flavor of the ingredients that you're trying to put on top of it. So I'm just taking the goat cheese and spreading those on top of, or spreading that on top of the cracker. I would recommend letting your goat cheese sit out at room temperature for about 30 minutes. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard time spreading it and you may end up breaking your crackers. This recipe is great because you can make a lot of them for a party or something like that ahead of time and just set them out and everyone will love them. Do not flip over your crackers and make your plate all messy like I did. If you're trying to photograph it for a YouTube video, after the goat cheese is on there, I'm just putting a little dollop of fig spread. If you've never had fig spread before, it's very sweet. So just use that sparingly. You don't want it to, you know, overtake the flavor of the goat cheese. I drizzled on some honey, and then I'm just going to quick chop up some walnuts and sprinkle those over the top. And so again, super quick appetizer. I would even eat this for lunch. If you like goat cheese, you will love this. I am totally a fan of like the sweet and savory combination. But yeah, these turned out really good. I was glad that I tried that take on this original recipe. All right, I'm gonna try one of these for you guys. Which one do I want? Which one do I want? I don't know. That's really good. If you like goat cheese, you will love those. The fig spread and the honey goes perfectly with the goat cheese, and the cracker doesn't add any like distracting flavor, and the crunch of the walnuts, delicious. Make ASAP. All right, so that is gonna wrap it up for today's video on Mediterranean cooking. If you guys are gonna try out any of these recipes, let me know which one you are most excited to try. Don't forget to check out Green Chef. I will leave all the information in the description box below if you'd like to try out their meal delivery service. I've tried many delivery services for meals, and they are truly one of the best and highest quality out there. I will see you in my next video. Bye.